All right, Judges 8, let's call this Integrity 2, as in TOO, Part 2, number 2. And let's subtitle it Moral Decisions versus Business Decisions. Now, it is not always the case that a business decision will run into conflict with a moral decision, but this chapter is going to suggest a time when they do. And I think it's going to, as usual, give us an opportunity to see some applications that we can make in crossroads we're going to face in our own lives, understanding that in this chapter, we are seeing the aftermath of Gideon making the call to the rest of the nation after God used the 300 soldiers, I guess we can call them, to rout the Midianites. And so even though he's going to call a number of tribes, one is going to be particularly ticked off, and it's the tribe of Ephraim. And they're going to be like, why did you not call us to the battle? Who says that? Except for some of the most courageous people, because as we noticed back in the song of Barak and the song of Deborah and Barak, need to probably put that in the reverse order because Deborah was the one who showed more courage in that particular era of the judges. But in the song of Deborah and Barak, there was a distinction made between the tribes that showed courage and the tribes that kind of had a question mark by their absence from the battle. Ephraim was one of those tribes that actually showed up, and we are once again seeing them not just willing to show up, upset when they don't get the call first off the bat to help in the fight. That's a level of courage that's admirable. And because it is relatively rare, not just in Israel, but just in life, count yourself blessed when you have an Ephraim in your corner. I have had Ephraims in my corner. I can tell you they are invaluable in a time of need. But understand this, it is again going to make a contrast between the Ephraim level of courage and something else. Because towards the end of the chapter, we're going to see two cities that Gideon is not even going to ask for help in battle. He's just going to be, we are exhausted. 300 men pursuing an army. Can you just give us some bread? And the answer is going to come in the form of mockery twice. And so he's going to make a promise. I'm going to win in battle because he has now found his courage in God. And when I come back, I'm coming back a whole lot different than please help me, please. And that's exactly what happens, because after he is successful over the kings that he is pursuing, he comes back to those towns. And one town, he simply punishes the leaders who mocked him in his army's time of exhaustion and need. In the other, he's going to knock down one of their towers and actually kill the men of the city. And so in getting to that point about business decisions versus moral decisions, this is a chapter where the moral decisions aren't going to be all that tough. So the Midianites weren't great people. They didn't just steal from Israel. They stole from Israel to the point where they drove them into caves. Anything that they could earn, the Midianites would steal. And so even though the men of Succoth and Penuel, the two towns that Gideon asked for bread, made a wise business decision, sitting the fence in case Midian ended up winning the battle, they did it at the cost of a clear moral decision. Helping Israel wasn't a tough moral decision, but it was one that came with consequences. And we've seen in the past when Rahab had to put herself on the line, she was willing to risk herself, and God gave her honor for that, even though she could have been destroyed with the rest of the town of Jericho. Likewise, Jael, not necessarily an Israelite, still putting herself at risk to help the Israelites. Now we're seeing in contrast some of the leaders in some of these towns. We don't know if they're Israelite towns or not, but choosing to sit the fence in a time of moral clarity. And in doing so, they're going to pursue safety to their own peril. And it doesn't always work out like that. Understanding when David fled Saul, he fled to the priest at Nob, the priest who helped him, Saul would eventually kill. And so there are no Cinderella story happy endings in these Bible narratives. Just as there are times when God will allow vengeance to have a heavy hand against the wicked, there are times when he will allow his servants to be sacrificed. Why? Because that's the image that we see of the Christ, having done no wrong, still suffering at the hands of the wicked. And so even though a relatively simple moral decision can be complicated by the threat of either physical violence or death, sometimes it can be simplified if we simply think of Ephraim in the times when we really needed a friend to step up on our behalf, in understanding what kind of friend we should be in a time of moral clarity. And so, as we often say, God's best to you as you go forward in him. This time, if nothing else, simplifying the decision. In a time when trying to make a clever business decision can prevent us from making a moral choice that's actually relatively